tackle. Where did it all go wrong for them?
Well, look, you have to start at the very top. And in that dressing room, it's Julian Nagelsmann. That's where it completely went wrong. I remember watching Germany play against Northern Ireland, and for about 45 minutes, it looked like Northern Ireland was the better team, and Germany was the team that maybe were the underdogs in that, until I think Florian Wirtz decided he was going to call game in that match. I've always thought Julian Nagelsmann looked like he did not have a grip and did not have a pulse on this German national team. Julian Nagelsmann, for all his ideas, for all, just repertoire that he brings to this position, or he brought to this position, the one thing that I would say about him, he was so stubborn with some of the decisions he made. I mean, you brought players in and you lived and died by players like Leroy Sané, who completely underperformed. I thought Sané, the fact that he kept keeping him in the starting 11 was shocking to me. The question over Deniz Undav, should Deniz Undav start or come off the bench? It was glaring that Deniz Undav should have had more of an impact than he was. But the big thing that I saw, and I talked about it on our match day and match night coverage, was he made a massive decision to bring back Manuel Neuer, who was retired from the German national team, and name him as a starter, even when Oliver Baumann was his number one. And Manuel Neuer proved that he had no business being Germany's number one at this World Cup. Just wasn't good enough, didn't have great enough performances. The one performance he's had was against Paraguay when he made a penalty save. But it just was a disaster for Nagelsmann.
Yeah. I mean, to find out more, we should probably head to our resident German football expert, Rafa Honigstein, friend of the show. How are you doing, Rafa?
I've just about recovered from the disappointment, but thanks for bringing up all the trauma and sadness. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. So, I mean, where do you start? Are you reeling from the World Cup, the disappointing campaign? For you, what is the overriding feeling that you have now? And was this always on the cards?
Well, this is an excellent question. I think a lot of people, and I would include myself in that, had some concerns and some worries about this tournament. Not so much because we don't have good players, not because we didn't have enough to go beyond Paraguay. We should have done, even with all the issues we just mentioned, and we'll mention in further detail. But I always felt that France, our likely opponent in the last 16, were going to be too good, whatever happens. So I think a lot of people went into this thinking, this Germany team are okay, they have a lot of issues, but they're not set up to be a real contender, a real challenger. And that's why we're probably not going to see a deep run. Now, having said all that, I think it still came as a disappointment just how confused and bad, especially the last two performances were. Even the Ivory Coast game, Germany won, but struggled. But then against proper opposition, as I would say, of different caliber and in different terms of challenges, Ecuador and Paraguay, Germany lost. And that is unacceptable. I think you have to look at the leadership. You have to look, of course, at some of the performances. But overall, a real opportunity lost because this team had already shown at the Euros that they have quality and they could have played a lot better football, I thought, with better coaching.
Rafa, one of the biggest news this summer has been around Jurgen Klopp. Obviously, we saw him in the media around the World Cup, and now we are hearing about deep-rooted reports about him nearing just this cycle of becoming Germany's next manager. What's the latest on that, and is the deal done?
It is essentially done. I think he'll be announced on Friday, officially at a press conference. But yeah, it's been on the cards. He, I think, was quite smart in the way that he was quite prominent during the coverage, working for German television. So people always saw him and always, I think, had this idea, you know, what would happen if Klopp would swap the microphone for sitting slightly further down in the stadium and being the coach. So he was sort of the shadow German national team manager throughout the tournament, and that made life more difficult for Nagelsmann. They had this bit of a ding-dong when Klopp made a joke that really was at the expense of Nagelsmann, intimating that, you know, it's just a question of time before he takes over. It was funny because people knew that there was a kernel of truth in it, but of course it didn't go down very well. But yeah, it's been coming for a long time. I can tell you that even a few years ago, when Joachim Löw was on his way out, it was clear that Klopp had a big ambition to take the managerial job in Germany. It didn't work out then timing-wise, because Löw resigned and Hansi Flick took over earlier than Klopp had anticipated. He stuck with Liverpool for another 3 years or so, but now the time was ripe and there was no other clear-cut candidate that the whole country wanted just as much as him.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like the hiring of Klopp will do enough to remedy what the German national team is going through right now? Or do the changes maybe need to be a bit more deep-rooted and a bit more institutional, as well as just a manager change and a change of tactics maybe?
This is exactly the question that 80 million people are asking themselves. Is this about changing the coach, or is this about changing the culture, changing the identity, having another rethink the way we did 25 years ago? Now, I happen to think that there is nothing fundamentally wrong with the way Germany produces talent. I think we're producing some fantastic footballers. We have players that play for the best team in the world right now, and they hold their own. They're not bench players, they're not bit part players. Situation to me is incomparable to the ones 25 years ago, where we really didn't have that type of player at all. But of course, you need balance. You need strategy, you need energy, you need motivation, you need the cohesion. All these things were missing, but all these things are the sort of stuff that Jurgen Klopp traditionally brings to the table. So whether his idea of playing football, which we all know from the Liverpool days, is the perfect fit for this generation of players remains to be seen. I think both he and the team will have to adapt and have to find some middle ground. Can't be quite as technical as Nagelsmann, but he doesn't have the players to go rock and roll style football the way that his best Liverpool players did. So there has to be some kind of adaptation process. But I think in terms of getting people on board, creating momentum, creating intensity, creating energy, we all know what Jurgen Klopp can do. And I think if you do that, that's half the battle won. So I'm quite hopeful that we see a much stronger Germany in time for the Euros in 2 years' time.
Rafa, just to stay on Jurgen Klopp, I mean, you mentioned the rock and roll football. We've seen how he's transformed so many players that have come underneath him. Of the players of this current German generation, I think of a Florian Wirtz, but what are some players who might benefit from having a Jurgen Klopp as their manager for Germany going into the Euros?
Well, there will be winners and losers. I think the winners might be the kind of midfielders that can provide that coverage, that will run up and down the pitch for him. We know Liverpool's midfield in that 4-3-3 system, the accusation was sometimes that they're not technical enough, that they don't have a number 10, that they're all effectively number 8 or number 6 running in straight lines. But of course, that was the idea. You support your wingers, you support your fullbacks by closing that space through the energy in midfield. Now, do I see a lot of players at the moment who are sort of in that mold? No, he'll have to find them, or he'll have to be creative or change his ways a little bit. But I don't see any reason why everybody collectively will not improve once there's a much more sort of cohesive system, when people know their jobs, know the role, know the system. The biggest problem with Nagelsmann for me was that he was flip-flopping systems, flip-flopping positions, flip-flopping personnel. One day he's saying Goretzka's my guy, the next day Goretzka doesn't play a single minute. One day Kimmich is a midfield, the next day he's a right back. I think Klopp will have a much more stricter idea. And he famously said something that always stuck with me. He said, it's better to have a bad plan than no plan at all if you're a coach. And I think he will have a plan. Now, whether that plan is 100% correct or not, time will tell. Yeah. But I think the plan will be very, very detailed, and he'll get it onto the pitch. And I think that will help this team, even if it's not the perfect match from the get-go.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Rafa, for your insight. And I'll leave you with this, just as a brighter note. The last time Spain won the World Cup, Germany won the next one. So you never know. 4 years is a long time in football. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Rafa.
I feel much better now. Thank you.
Nice one. See you soon.